In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to integrate Google Maps in your Ionic application. We're going to be creating an application with a Google Map complete with these custom markers that have information windows when clicked, and in a second part, we'll be able to use Google Maps navigation. So stay tuned. If you like this channel and our content, please head over to our online store, codeswag.co.uk/shop, which has a shop especially for developers, where we sell cool tech like this 2TB NVMe M2 SSD from Samsung, which is blazing fast. It has read and write speeds of up to 3500 megabits per second and all kinds of other awesome tech. So please head over to the store and support this channel. So the first thing that you need to do is to head over to the website console.developers.google.com, and it's going to open the last project that you are working in. You need to make sure that you are logged in to your Google account, and then you can proceed. So if you come here to the top left corner on the down arrow button, you can see a list of your projects and you can create a new project. So here's the create project button. Okay, now we can select a name for our project. So I'm going to call this CodeSwag Map Demo. So I'm going to call this the CodeSwag Map Demo, and I'm going to leave the organization blank and click Create. Okay, so we need to refresh to view the newly created project. Okay, so after having gone back to the dashboard, for the dashboard you just need to go to the navigation menu, API and services, and then dashboard, and you'll see a list of your recent projects. So let's go to CodeSwag Map Demo. Right, so we need to select up here where it says enable APIs and services, and this takes us to the API library. So we want to click here where it says Maps JavaScript API, and then next click enable. After the API has been enabled, we want to click on this Credentials tab. And then we want to click on Credentials in APIs and Services in order to create new credentials. When the page loads, we'll click on Create Credentials, and we want to create an API key. So this creates our API key. So we want to make sure that we copy it and save it in a safe location. So next we need to head to our command line. Okay, so here we are in our command line, and we want to initiate a new Ionic 5 project. So we do that by running the command Ionic start and press enter. And we'll be prompted to select our framework. We're going to use Angular, and we need to enter a project name. And we need to select a starter template. We want to use the blank template. So that's going to download and extract the blank starter. We want to, I'm just going to say yes to this just in case to integrate with capacitor, but I don't think we'll be making use of capacitor in this project. Okay, so we want to decline creating an Ionic account. I already have one. And that's it, our project has been created. So next we want to navigate into our project folder. We'll do that by cd and the name of our folder. And that's it, we're inside our folder. I'll just clear the screen. Okay, so next we want to open the project in our code editor. I use Visual Studio Code. So with Visual Studio Code, you can simply type in code, a space, and a period, press enter, and that will open your project in Visual Studio Code. So the next step is to look for a file called index.html. We'll find it under source, and here it is, index.html. And what we want to do now is to enter a script tag inside the head. So inside this head section, we want to So this is the script tag that we need to enter and the source. And then here where it says key and then equals, we need to paste in the API key that we copied. So let's paste that in. So if you require this text, don't worry. If you check the description, there's going to be a link to all this stuff that you need to type in. So no need to worry about that. Everything is available. So, okay, after we've entered the API script, we need to also add async defer. All right, so that's it. Let's press Control S or Command S on a Mac in order to save. And that's it. Let's close this. So the next step is we want to go to source and then app and homepage, and we want to open up home.page.html. We're also going to be making use of home.page.css and home.page.ts. So just open these one time and close this sidebar. So in home.page.html, I want to delete all this content except for the header. Okay, so after deleting all the content inside Ion content, I want to replace it with a div with hash map, and we're going to give it an ID of map. And I'm going to save that. Next, we want to go to the TypeScript file, home.page.ts. And the first thing that we want to do is to import the view and element ref classes from Angular core. Okay, so after the imports, but before this at component decorator, we want to type in declare var Google any. So we just need to do this because when we are calling the Google API, you may get an error saying Google is undefined. So we do that in order to avoid that error. So inside our homepage class, we need to create a variable called map of type any. Okay, and then we need to create a method called show map, and this is the method that we're going to call in order to display our Google map. Okay, so this is the code that we need to display our map. Let me just run through it. So first of all, we import the classes viewchild and element ref from Angular core, and we declare that variable that I was talking about, which we're making use of down here, this Google variable. So what we're doing is inside the class, we are creating a variable called map, and this is going to hold our map. And using this viewchild decorator, we are grabbing onto the map, which is, I believe this one right here. And we are also making use of element ref. So inside the show map method, we are first of all creating a constant containing a location. So this is a latitude and longitude based location, which is going to be the starting point for our Google map. So our Google map will be centered around these coordinates. And then these are the options for our map. We are telling it that the center should be location, which is the coordinates here. This is the initial zoom level of 15. And this option here, the disable default UI, that means that when we render our map, it won't have the zoom in and zoom out buttons that you usually have with a Google map. So that means we're going to have just the map only and no UI controls that come default with Google Maps. And then we're saying that this .map, this map variable here, is now going to contain a new Google map, which is containing this map element ref and also containing these options. So this part is what actually renders the map. This part contains the options that we are using to customize our particular map. And then finally, we have this method here called IonViewDidEnter. Now, IonViewDidEnter is one of the Ionic lifecycle methods. I think I'm going to create a video about this in the future, about the Ionic lifecycle. But essentially what Ionic ViewDidEnter does, or what Ionic does, is that each time we open the page, IonViewDidEnter, this method will be run. So each time we open our home page, this .showMap method will be called, and this .showMap will create a new map using these options and render it onto this div that we created here. So that's it. This should initially render our map. So let's press Control S on a Windows machine to save, or Command S on a Mac, and then let's run this application in our browser. So in order to run the application in our browser, we need to head to the command line, and inside our command line we need to run the command Ionic serve. So that's going to build our application and run it in our web browser. Okay, so we're getting this Google is not defined reference error, which is what I was talking about before. But usually this happens, I'm not sure why it happens, but the quick fix is we'll need to stop our server and then just restart it again. So let's do that. So going back to the command line, we need to press Control C. That will cancel the running process. And let's just say Y to confirm. And let's go back. And in the code editor, I just want to make a quick, let's just let's save that. Okay, so we just want to restart the Ionic serve process. Okay, so so everything is fine here in the console. There's no error message, but we're not getting anything in our map here. So okay, I know what the problem is. We need to head back to the code. Right, so the problem is that we need to, so this div right here doesn't have a height. That's why nothing is showing here. It has a height of 0. So the fix is to go to home.page.scss, and I actually want to make this the first entry. So we need to select that map and give it a height of 100%. So we should save this, and when we get back to the browser, you'll find that the map renders as expected. Okay, so this is awesome. We have our Google Map. It's running as expected, and yeah, that looks great. So we have the map centered around our chosen location. So next, let's look at how we can add custom markers to this map. So we want to put our own custom markers in our own locations. So for that, we need to head back to the code, and we're going to be working in home.page.ts. Okay, so like I showed you in the beginning, we want each of our markers to have an info window. So we need to create a variable for those info windows. So we're going to have info windows, and it's going to be of type any. And right now I'm going to set it to an empty array. Next, we want to have an array variable called markers. And this one is going to contain our markers. And I'm going to set this equal to this list of locations that I've already prepared. So the array is, so this is basically an array of objects, and each object represents a marker. The object has a title and a latitude and a longitude. You can actually put any other custom information that you may want, like for example, a description of the location or whatever, but I just simply have a title and then a latitude and longitude. And then we're going to use this latitude and longitude information to place it at the appropriate location on the map, and also the title, so that we know which marker we're actually looking at. And then all this information is going to be in the info window. So when you click on the info window, it'll give you the title and the latitude and longitude. All right, that's great. So next we need to create a method that's going to place the markers on our Google map. Okay, so I have created this method called add markers to map, and as you can see here, we have this this red squiggly line under add info window to marker. The method doesn't exist yet. So let me create this and then I'll explain everything. Okay, so we're done creating the necessary functions. Let's just go through all this code and I'll explain what it all means. Okay, so once again, we want to add markers, custom markers to our map, complete with info windows. So first we have this method called add markers to map, and that method takes in an it takes in a parameter called markers. So if you go up here, you remember that our markers are the markers array is an array of objects, right? So it's going to take in that array, and then what we're doing here is we're looping through each of the objects in that particular array. Let me adjust my screen up here so that we can see one object. So we have this object here, and down here we're looping through all the objects. So we're saying let marker of markers. So this marker is then gonna contain that object. So the first thing we're doing is we're creating a variable called position, and then we're using the Google Maps lat longitude class in order to create that position object. So then we use the latitude right here and the longitude from the marker in order to create this position object. And then next we are creating a marker object from, again, the Google Maps API library. So we're creating a marker object, we're calling it map marker, and we're setting its position to be this position object that we created up here, right? So this position object is going to be the position property of the marker object, the map marker object. And the title of the map marker is going to be set to the value of our marker title. So this data right here is now going to be the title of our marker object. And then we have some additional properties that we are adding. I think these are the compulsory properties. Every marker needs to have a position and it needs to have a title. And then this is additional information that we are adding. We're adding in the latitude and the longitude. We could very well have had a description property. So for example, we could have a description for the Canadian Embassy, and then we would add it here. We would add the description here so that when our marker is opened, it can have a description. And then we have our map marker object, and now we are attaching it to the map using this set map method. And then we are attaching it to our map this.map, which is the map up here, which is the actual map that we are rendering in our view. Okay, so back down here. And then finally, we are adding an info window. So we're using the add info window to marker method, and we're taking that marker that we created and we're attaching an info window to it. So this add info window to marker is another method that we created. So if we come down here, I'll explain the method. Right, so for every marker that we are creating, we'll pass in the marker object to the add info window to marker method. And the first thing that we do is we first create a variable called info window content. So our info windows, they render regular HTML. So we have a div, which we've given an ID of content. We have an H2 header, and the H2 header, we are assigning this marker title. So once again, if I scroll up, this title of our marker, we are putting it inside an H2. And then here we have two paragraph tags, and we're attaching the marker latitude and the marker longitude right here. So as I was saying before, we could have had a description inside this object. So what we'd simply need to do is we would put in some markup that would contain the description, right? And then we close our div tag here. So this whole part, this whole thing over here is some HTML markup and these variables where we're putting in the custom information for each marker. So all of this is gonna get assigned to this info window content variable. So once we've assembled our info window content, here we are actually creating the info window object, right? So we have an instance we have a class called info window inside the Google Maps API, and then here we're creating an instance of that class. So it has a property called content, and the content for each info window is going to be this that we create, the markup and the particular variables for that particular info window. Right, so after we have created the info window, right? So for each marker that we're passing in to add info window to marker, we want to add an event listener. So we use the add listener method, and it takes in two parameters. The first parameter is the type of listener, so we are putting in a click listener, and the second parameter is the function that we want to run each time that we have the click listener activated. So each time that we click on a marker, we want to first of all close all info windows that are currently open, and then we want to open the particular info window for this marker inside this particular map. And then once we have attached the click listener to our marker, we want to take the info window and we want to push it into our array of info windows. So if we scroll up here, remember we have this empty array of info windows. So that means that each time we add an info window to a marker, we then add that info window to our info windows array. And then finally, we have this method for closing all the info windows. So remember, each time we click on a marker, we want to first close any open info windows. So to close the open info windows, all we're simply doing is we are looping through these info windows inside our info windows array. So all the info windows that have been added into this, we want to loop through that and close any open info windows. So we loop through all the info windows, we close them, and then after that is done, after we've closed all the info windows, then we open the particular info window that we want. So we do this so that we avoid having two info windows open at any one time. So that means at any one time, each time we click on a marker, it opens only the info window for that particular marker. All right, so that's great. Let's press Control S to save, or Command S on a Mac, and let's open the application in our browser and test it out. Okay, so once again, we're having this error that Google is not defined. Like I showed you before, we simply need to restart our server. This error only occurs when you're testing in the browser. It won't happen in a live application. So let's go back to our server in the command line. So we just press Control C to cancel, yes to confirm, and then run Ionic serve once again, and this will reopen another instance of the test browser. It's a bit annoying, but that's one of the bugs with the Google Maps JavaScript API. Okay, we have our map open, but nothing is happening. Our info windows are not showing. That's because I made a slight oversight. What we need to do is we need to go back to our map in our show map variable and make sure that we are adding the markers. Okay, so we are back in our code and we need to go to the show map variable, and right here, after rendering our map, we need to add the markers to the map. So I just simply up here I just created the method, but we're never calling the method. So we need to call the method down here, and we'll say this dot add markers to map and add the array of markers. Okay, so now after we save this and reload our page, everything should work. Okay, so that's it. Our info windows are now rendering as expected. So as you can see, we have our title. Here's Chop Chop Brazilian Steakhouse, and it's an H2 header, and we have our latitude and longitude as paragraph tags. If I click on another marker, you can see that the old marker closes and the new marker opens, which is the behavior that we expect. And this is the case for each info window. I can also close the info window with this little X right here in the top right corner. And also if I click on anything else, and the map also nicely moves to center around the info window. All the code for this tutorial is available on the CodeSwag website. Just click on the link in the description below and you'll be able to access the code repository. When you do download the code to your machine, make sure that you register a new Google project and you use your own API key, because I'm going to delete my project and you won't be able to use my API key. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to add a button here for navigation. So when we click on a particular marker, inside the info window, we'll have a little button that if we click, we can navigate from our current location to the location of the marker. So make sure that you've subscribed to my channel so that when that tutorial is up, which is going to be in the next few days, you'll get a notification. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, click on the little bell icon so that you get a notification when that tutorial is up. Please make sure to like this video and share it with your friends. And if you love the tutorials that I create and you want to support this channel so that I can create more content, please head over to codeswag.co.uk/shop. I have a shop, an online e-commerce store for developers where you can buy awesome gadgets and awesome merchandise, especially for developers. Thank you very much and see you next time.